I was completely alone out there, deep in the northern Utah backcountry. The kind of alone where, once it gets dark, you're done seeing anything man-made. No porch lights, no distant traffic. Just trees, dirt, and whatever else happens to be awake with you. That's usually why I go out solo. I like the quiet. I like being able to shut everything off for a night. But it also means if something goes wrong, there's nobody else around to tell you it's fine. Or that you're imagining things. I lost cell service about a mile into the hike. I remember checking my phone out of habit and seeing nothing but no service. That's normal for that area, but it still makes things feel more serious when it happens. I picked my campsite because it wasn't obvious. It was tucked back just enough that you wouldn't stumble into it unless you were actually looking. Trees were close on 3 sides, with just a small opening for the tent. It felt private. That mattered to me. I ate, cleaned up, and put my fire out earlier than usual. I took my time with it, stirring the ash until there was nothing glowing. Once it was out, it got dark fast. I zipped into the tent and lay there listening to bugs and wind. That heavy quiet you only get when there's nothing else going on. That's when I heard what sounded like talking. At first, I didn't react, but then it happened again. Short bits, pauses, more than one person. I sat up and listened. They weren't close, but they weren't far either. Somewhere downhill, deeper in the trees. I waited for something normal to break through. Laughing, music, anything. Instead, I saw light. A steady orange glow through the trees. Low, flickering, definitely fire. That's when my stomach dropped. I hadn't seen anyone else all day. No cars at the trailhead, no other camps. And now there was a fire burning after full dark. Like whoever was there didn't care who noticed. My fire was out. My tent was dark. From where they were, I would have blended right into the trees. I stayed inside longer than I should have, watching that glow through the tent fabric and listening to the voices drift in and out. Sometimes it sounded like whispering. Other times, like everyone talking at once, but quietly. Then there was a sharp sound that cut through everything and stopped just as fast. I don't know why I decided to look. I slipped my boots on and eased out of the tent. I didn't turn my headlamp on. The fire gave off enough light to see where I was stepping. I noticed the smell before anything else. Not campfire smoke. It was heavy, and underneath it was something sour. Faint, but wrong enough that it made me stop for a second. I stayed low and moved toward the glow until I could see into the clearing. There were 5 of them, all dressed dark. Hoodies and jackets, hoods up. Regular-looking people. Nothing about them stood out. They stood around a fire in a loose circle. In the middle was a stump. On top of it was a small animal. A rabbit, I think. Its legs were tied with cord, stretched out flat against the wood. One of them knelt and said something quietly. The others answered together. Same words. Same timing. It sounded rehearsed. Then the kneeling one stood up with a knife. He hesitated for a second, like he was waiting, then brought it down. The sound was dull and heavy. Blood spread across the stump and ran down the sides. The rabbit kicked once and went still. Nobody reacted. Another person stepped forward and used their fingers to smear the blood into cuts already carved into the wood. Slow movements. Careful ones. The chanting started again. Lower now. Slower. Nobody sounded rushed. That's when I heard movement behind me. It sounded like someone shifting their weight. The fire flared brighter for a moment, and one of them lifted his head. He looked right at me. I don't know how he could see me. I was back in the trees. But I know what it feels like when someone locks eyes with you. And that was it. He didn't look surprised. He looked like he'd already figured I was there. I didn't wait to see what happened next. I backed away, then moved faster, keeping my footing, not running blind. I got back to my tent and zipped it shut, my hands shaking enough that I had to slow myself down. I sat there listening. No one followed me from what I could tell. The chanting continued like nothing had changed. That's the part I still don't like thinking about. I didn't sleep. Every sound made me tense. Once or twice I heard movement somewhere nearby, but it never got close enough to force a decision. When the sky finally started to lighten, everything went quiet. I packed up as soon as I could see. I didn't eat. I didn't linger. I just got my stuff together and started out. The trail passed right by the clearing on the hike out. In daylight, it looked normal at first glance, like a spot people had used before. The fire had burned down to ash and charcoal, stones still in place. The stump was exactly where it had been. Up close, I could see what I'd only guessed at the night before. The top of the stump was dark and soaked through. Symbols were carved into it, cut deep enough that you noticed them right away. Around it were remains, bones with bits of flesh still attached, fur matted and stiff. They were placed carefully, not tossed aside. There were candle stubs melted into the dirt, burned cord, boot prints overlapping around the fire, like people had moved around it for a while. And the ground near the stump was worn down in a few spots, smooth, like people had knelt there more than once. I didn't stay long. By the time I reached the trailhead, my truck was still the only one there. I sat in it for a minute before starting the engine, just trying to calm down. The smell stayed on my clothes the whole drive home. I washed everything twice. I don't camp alone anymore, and I never leave my fire burning long enough for anyone else to see it. Because whatever that was, they weren't improvising. They were doing something they already knew how to do. This happened in Canada, in the Coast Mountains. I had a free day and decided to do a solo hike. Pack, water, snacks, in and out. It's one of those trails that's busy near the start. Then you get a little deeper, and it can go dead quiet. I wasn't worried about it. I'd done stuff like that plenty of times. I was a couple miles into this hike when I started hearing someone behind me. At first, I didn't care. It's a trail. People pass you. So when I hit a wider spot, I stepped to the side like normal and pretended to adjust my pack strap, just letting them go by. But they didn't go by. Two guys came up and stopped with me. Packs on. Little radios clipped on their shoulder straps. One of them had an easy smile. The other one didn't really smile at all. Just looked me over and then looked past me up the trail. They asked if I was solo. I said yeah. Then they told me they were out helping with a missing hiker search. Volunteers. Had I seen anyone? I told them no. It had been quiet all morning. I asked who they were looking for. They gave me a name. Sarah. I asked where she started and where the command post was set up. Their answers were all over the place. Down there, main trailhead, somewhere near the ridge. Stuff that sounded like an answer without actually being one. And while we're talking, the quiet guy drifts a step, so I'd have to squeeze around him to keep going. The smiling guy stays in front of me. Then the questions shift off the missing hiker and onto me. Did anyone know I was out here? Was someone expecting me back? Did I have a satellite device? Was there service up higher? Was I sharing location? I lied. Told them my friend knew my loop and he was meeting me later. The quiet guy nodded like he was logging it. Then they suggested I walk with them, just to the junction. That's when I got that spike of, okay, why are you pushing that? I tried to end it like normal, said good luck, and stepped like I was going to keep hiking uphill. The quiet guy moved with me, like he was blocking without making it a block. Then they said I could keep walking, just with them. So I nodded like, sure. Anything to keep it calm. And instead of going uphill, I turned and walked downhill toward the junction, because I figured a trail split might mean people. I kept my pace normal, didn't look back, didn't run yet, but they followed right with me, one behind me, one off my shoulder. close enough that if I stopped, they'd stop. We rounded the bend and the junction sign came into view, and there was a third guy standing there, not hiking through, not sitting down, just posted up by the sign with a pack on. And when he saw us, he looked right at me first, not the other two, me. Now I'm standing at this sign with 3 guys and trails splitting, and the way they spread out is what hit me. The third guy drifts toward the left trail. The 2 I'd been talking to sit on the other directions, including the uphill behind me. Nobody grabs me. Nobody says, "Don't leave." It just feels like they're keeping the space small. They keep it casual, but they're not really talking about the missing hiker anymore. They're talking around me. One of them points at my phone pocket on my shoulder strap and asks what my battery's at. Battery, not service. Then the quiet guy asks again if anyone's expecting me back and if my friend has my location. I repeat the lie and try to sound annoyed like he's being paranoid. Then I tried to leave. I say I forgot my water filter up trail and I'm gonna jog back and grab it. I turn to go uphill and the quiet guy snaps, "No, just no." The smiling guy immediately tries to soften it. "Stay here, we'll go with you. We'll help you look." And the third guy says, "Don't make it weird." That line flipped the switch, because I wasn't making it weird. They were. I take a small step back without thinking, and the quiet guy matches it instantly, like he's watching my feet. And I realize, if I stay at this post, I'm not leaving on my terms. So I ran. I turned and took off uphill as hard as I could. Behind me, I heard shouting and then boots hit the trail. More than one set. I had trekking poles, and they were suddenly just in the way, so I carried them for a few seconds until one snagged and ripped out of my hand. I didn't go back for it. The trail was steep and loose, and I almost ate it on the first switchback, but I caught myself and kept going. I pulled my phone out while I was running and tried calling for help. Nothing. No service. Not even a failed call. I looked back one time and saw 2 of them behind me. The third guy wasn't there, and that made it worse because it meant they'd already split up. I kept running. Up ahead, I saw one of those side paths cutting off to the right. Not marked, just worn dirt like people take it to a lookout. I knew it could dead end. I didn't care, because if I stayed on the main trail, I was predictable. So I took it. The path narrowed down fast and the brush got thicker. I heard the footsteps on the main trail blast past the turn, then stop. Then I heard someone call out, loud enough for me to hear, that I went right. A second later, I heard someone crashing through brush after me. The side path opened onto a rocky overlook. Dead end. I spun around and I could hear them getting close. So I looked for anything that went down. Off to the left, there was a loose drainage. Pine needles, rocks, scrub. Steep and nasty, but it went down. So I dropped into it. I slid more than I climbed. I grabbed at bushes and roots and scraped my hands up on rock. I banged my knee hard enough that it hurt to put weight on it, but I kept moving. Somebody yelled, "I see her!" And it wasn't from behind me. It was from above, like one of them was already up higher looking down into the drainage. That meant they were getting around me. I hit the bottom and pushed into brush and stayed low. Then I heard a radio crackle close by, close enough that I could hear the static. And I heard, "Cut her off!" That made my stomach drop, because you don't say that if everyone's behind me. So I flattened behind a fallen log. I could see legs moving through gaps in the brush. Slow steps, like they were taking their time. They stopped near me, like they were listening. I didn't move. I didn't breathe. I just stayed flat. Finally, the steps moved on. I waited until I couldn't hear them anymore, then crawled out and started moving again, still staying low, trying to angle downhill toward where the main trail should be. I pushed through a thinner spot in the brush and back onto the trail. By a stroke of luck, a park ranger was nearby. Uniform, badge, radio, all of it. I grabbed his sleeve and just dumped it out fast. 3 guys, said they were volunteers, said there was a missing hiker, tried to keep me at the junction, followed me off trail, radios. The ranger's face changed immediately. He goes, "What missing hiker?" I told him the name they used. He shakes his head and keys his radio right away, asking dispatch to confirm. Then he steps in front of me and tells me to stay behind him. Dispatch comes back quick. There's no active missing person in that trail system. Nothing open in that area. And hearing that out loud, right after what just happened, made my stomach drop all over again. Because it meant the entire story they used to approach me was made up. The ranger asks which direction they went. I point up slope. He calls for another unit to head toward the junction, and then he walks me down trail fast, keeping me behind him the whole time. A couple minutes later, we start passing normal hikers. Couples, families, people taking photos. It feels unreal how normal it looks. At the trailhead, there was another ranger and a sheriff's truck by the time we got down. They sat me down and took my statement. Where it started, what they looked like, radios, the junction, the drainage. They asked if any of them touched me. I said no. They sent someone back up toward the junction. They didn't find 3 guys with radios. They didn't find anyone matching what I described. They gave me a case number and told me to call if I remembered anything else. One of the rangers told me, really plain, that if someone on a trail starts asking about your battery, your service, and who's expecting you, don't keep talking. Just leave. I got in my car and drove out with my windows up and the doors locked, just trying to get back to a busy area. I ended up stopping at this little place to grab food because I felt shaky and I just wanted to be around people for a minute. I sat down, tried to act normal, and when the server came over, that's when I realized I didn't have my wallet in my pocket. I always toss it in the same zipper pocket on my backpack. So I pull my bag onto the bench next to me and unzip that pocket. My wallet's there, and shoved right up against it is this small, white, round thing. At first I thought it was like a contact case or one of those earbud things. Then I realized what it was. An air tag. I just stared at it for a second, like my brain didn't want to accept it, because that meant at some point, at the trailhead, on the trail, or at that junction, someone got close enough to my bag to drop it in. I didn't even think. I grabbed it and walked straight out to the parking lot and threw it as far as I could into the trees behind the building. Then I got in my car, locked the doors, and left. I checked my mirrors the whole way home. Nobody followed. I rolled into the campground late and grabbed a site far enough from the bathrooms that it was quiet, but close enough I could still see a couple other camps through the trees. Nothing fancy. Truck backed in, tent up, small fire, ate, crawled into the sleeping bag. Sometime in the night, I woke up to a sound at my table. Plastic. A light thump. Something sliding across wood. I didn't move. I listened with my eyes open, counting seconds. The sound wasn't clumsy like an animal. It was controlled, like somebody placing something down carefully. Then my tent zipper ticked. Just a touch, like someone tested it and decided not to commit. Silence after that. No footsteps walking away, no light. Just the campground going dead quiet again. I waited a full minute, then unzipped my tent a few inches and looked out. My headlamp caught my picnic table first. There was a cooler sitting on it. White, mid-size, clean, handle standing up. That cooler wasn't mine. I stepped out and walked up slow. My truck was still there, Doors closed, nothing looked disturbed. I put my hand on the cooler lid and felt the cold through the plastic. Condensation was beating on top. It had fresh ice in it. I opened it. Ice, bottled water, hot dogs, sliced cheese, 2 energy drinks, apples, all sealed, all normal, packed neat. No note, no name, no receipt. I shut it and stood there with that thick, heavy feeling you get when something is wrong but you can't label it yet. I called out once, loud enough for the closest sights. "Anybody missing a cooler?" Nothing answered. No zippers, no doors, no voices. I sat up until first light with my keys in my pocket and my headlamp beside me. I kept watching the road that ran past my sight, waiting for somebody to wander over and laugh like it was a mistake. Nobody came. When the host station opened up, I carried the cooler down there. The camp host was already outside with coffee. Older guy, radio clipped to his shoulder. I set the cooler on the counter and said, "This showed up at my table overnight." He stared at it like he didn't like what it meant. He checked the sides like he expected a name somewhere. "What site?" he asked. I told him. He looked up at me, then down at the cooler again. "You alone?" he said. "Yeah." He nodded like that fit a pattern. "Don't eat anything out of it. I'll handle it." I waited for questions. He didn't ask any. He turned his head slightly and spoke into the radio, low and quick. I went back to my site, trying to force it into a normal category. Wrong site, somebody drunk, somebody new to camping, anything that ends with a shrug. I made coffee and stayed busy. Packed loose gear, cleaned up trash, tried to act like I wasn't scanning every gap in the trees. Mid-morning, I walked to the restroom. 10 minutes, maybe less. I came back and stopped in the middle of my campsite. The cooler was on my picnic table again. Same cooler, same spot, handle up. I didn't walk up right away. I looked around first. Neighboring sites were calm. People making breakfast, a kid on a bike, someone slamming a car door in the distance. Nobody was watching me. Nobody looked like they'd just carried a cooler through the trees. I walked up to the table. The cooler was still cold. Condensation on the lid again, like it had been kept chilled, not dragged around in the sun. Next to it was a clear, disposable glove. Thin, cheap, the kind you see in a kitchen or a janitor cart. It was laid flat on the tabletop, fingers straight, like someone placed it carefully. I didn't open the cooler. I didn't touch the glove. I backed away and got in my truck. I drove straight to the host station. He took one look at my face and said, "It's back." I nodded. He set his coffee down and grabbed his radio. This time, he didn't keep it quiet. I heard my site number and the word cooler and again. He looked at me and said, "Go back. Stay in your truck. Don't touch it." I drove back and parked where I could see my table without being boxed in. I sat there with the engine off, windows up, watching the cooler like it was a live thing. About 20 minutes later, the host cart came down my road with another staff guy behind him. They walked into my site together, both scanning the ground. The host stopped at the table and pointed at the glove without touching it. The other guy took out a small trash bag and, with his own gloves on, lifted the glove into it like it was evidence. They opened the cooler. The host leaned in, checked the contents, and said something I couldn't hear. The staff guy nodded once, tight. Then they did something that made my stomach drop. They didn't take it to Lost and Found. They carried it away like they were removing a problem, not returning property. The host walked over to my truck and motioned for me to crack the window. "Pack up," he said. "I'm moving you to a different site near the office." "Why?" I asked. He paused like he was choosing words that wouldn't start a panic. "Because somebody's messing with you, and I don't like the way they're doing it." I packed in a hurry, Tent down, gear tossed, straps sloppy. I kept looking at the tree line like I expected somebody to step out and wave. They stuck me in a site near the host station, basically under a yard light. I tried to tell myself that was enough, that if somebody wanted to mess with me, they wouldn't do it with staff 10 yards away. But when it got dark, I still couldn't sleep. That night, from the site near the office, I could see across the loop into the darker section where my old spot was. I couldn't sleep anyway. I sat out in a camp chair with a dying little fire, just feeding it enough to keep a glow going. More for my own head than for warmth. Every time I started to nod off, I'd jolt awake and stare into the trees like I was expecting something to step out. Sometime around 2 a.m., I saw a headlamp moving through my old campsite. It wasn't bouncing around like someone looking for the bathroom. It went straight to my picnic table and stopped there. The light stayed pointed down at the tabletop, like they were checking something. I sat there watching, not moving, barely breathing, waiting for the head to turn toward me. It didn't. The light just clicked off. 1 second it was there, the next it was pure black again, like the person disappeared into the trees without making a sound. I stayed up the rest of the night with that fire burning down to coals, staring at the spot where the light had been, waiting for it to come back on. It never did. I woke up to the sound of my tent zipper moving. My eyes snapped open and I froze, listening. The sound stopped halfway up the tent door. Whoever it was hadn't opened it, just tested it, like they wanted to see if I'd wake up. Then a voice came from right outside my tent. "Forest Service, need you to step out for a quick permit check." I grabbed my phone. 1:40 a.m. My campsite sat a quarter-mile off the road, tucked back in the trees. I'd driven in late, cut the engine, and hadn't seen another vehicle the entire way. The forest had gone dead quiet the moment I shut my door. "Sir," the voice said again. Calm, patient. "Just want to take care of some paperwork. Dispersed camping doesn't require a permit there. I knew that. I'd checked before I left." I stayed quiet, hoping he'd get tired of waiting. A headlamp clicked on. Light bled through the tent fabric, turning everything inside pale and flat. I could see the outline of boots planted inches from the door. "Go ahead and come out," he said. "This'll be quick." I unzipped the tent just enough to see him. Green pants, tan shirt, campaign-style hat pulled low, a shoulder patch that looked right at a glance, shield shape, dark border, gold thread, but I couldn't read it clearly in the glare of his headlamp. Everything was close enough that I didn't question it right away. His boots caught my attention next. They were clean, no dust, no scuffs. I'd walked about 500 feet from my truck, and my own boots already looked worse than that. Behind him, through the trees, I could make out a vehicle parked sideways across the road. No headlights, engine idling low. I couldn't see inside it at all. "Evening," he said. "You got a permit for overnight use?" "I'm dispersed," I said. "You don't need one." He nodded, like he'd already expected that answer. "Requirement changed tonight." "For what?" I asked. "Wildlife management." That was the whole explanation. I asked for his name. He smiled, but his eyes didn't move. "Let's see your ID first." I handed it over. He didn't look at it right away, just held it, thumb rubbing the edge, like he was thinking through something. "You here alone?" he asked. "Yeah." His gaze drifted past me, over my shoulder, into the dark behind my tent, like he was checking for movement. "Heading out in the morning?" he asked. "Probably hike a bit, then I'm gone." He nodded. "Probably the loop that goes past the creek bend." My throat tightened. I hadn't told him that. There wasn't a sign for that trail. You couldn't see the creek from camp. He finally looked down at my ID. "You mind if I take a look around your setup?" he asked. "Is that required?" I said. He tilted his head slightly. "It'll go easier if you let me." I glanced toward the road again. Thought I saw movement inside the vehicle, a shadow shifting, someone sitting up. "I'd rather not," I said. The smile disappeared. "All right," he said. "Then you'll need to pack up and head out." "Right now?" "Area's closed, effective immediately. I'll lead you out." I hesitated. "I can drive myself." He shook his head. "We'll take point. You follow." The way he said it made my skin prickle, like the decision had already been made. "Can I see your identification?" I asked. He didn't answer, just lifted his hand and tapped the badge on his chest with one finger. "That's all you need," he said. I reached back into the tent and grabbed my keys. "I'll pack up," I said. He stepped closer, not touching me, just close enough that I could smell him. Dirty, musky. "Leave the tent," he said. "We don't have all night." That was enough. I nodded, zipped the tent closed, and said, "Give me a minute." He stepped back toward the trees. I didn't take a minute. I threw everything into the truck loose. Sleeping bag, food, stove. Didn't care. My hands shook so bad, I dropped my keys twice. When I pulled onto the road, his vehicle rolled forward like it was going to lead. Then it slowed and slowed until it fell in behind me. Their headlights filled my mirrors, close enough that the glare was constant, far enough that I still couldn't make out what kind of vehicle it was. They stayed there the entire drive out. No passing, no siren, just steady pressure behind me. When the highway finally came into view, their lights shut off. No turn signal, no pullover, just darkness. I sat at the stop sign longer than I needed to, heart pounding, scanning both directions. Nothing. I reported it the next morning. The ranger on the phone went quiet when I described the time. The permit check, the escort. "We don't conduct nighttime permit enforcement," he said finally. I asked if anyone else was patrolling that area. "No." I gave him the coordinates of my camp. Another pause. "That road was decommissioned years ago," he said. "We don't patrol back there." I asked who it might have been. He didn't answer. I haven't camped alone since, and I don't plan to anytime soon.